Welcome! Not so long ago, I made a video about Bethesda's future. In it, I said that Oblivion is one of my favorite games. And I thought, why won't I make a video top of my favorite games? And games that I think everyone must play before one dies. Let's not waste any time. Number 12, Horizon Zero Dawn. I've hesitated if I should include this game into the list, and the main reason why is that the game is not perfect. Yes, the bar is that high in this list. Now, before we will talk about the moments where the game is not perfect, let's focus on the part where the game is brilliant. First, the story, especially the lore of the game. But it is intertwined with the present narrative of the game, so I will address the narrative part and the lore as story from now on. As I said, it is brilliant. It introduces a lot of mysteries, and what is the most important, provides the answers. Answers are the most important part. In this case, the answers better be satisfying. And they are. So, the setting of the game is a mix of futurism, like robots, and primitive society. And the player is offered to discover what happened. Is this the future, or maybe an alternative universe? What can possibly lead to such a disaster? Yes, some may say that the plot is predictable to a certain extent, but it is not unpredictability that makes a good story. Just look at the Game of Thrones, where the showrunners were chasing unpredictability, a wow effect similar to the Red Wedding, but completely forgot to make the story sane. Now, let's get back to the game. I am not that good in discussing stories and narratives. Now, before we move on, I just want to mention one more thing about this story. Guerrilla Game Studio made in game reading actually interesting. Can you believe that? Never thought it was possible. So, the story is good in Horizon. What else? Gameplay, particularly fighting robots. The game offers a large variety of tools with different effects. I won't get into much details because I don't want to waste a lot of your time. We will jump right to the conclusions. The player must be cunning, innovative, and agile to win a fight against robots. Now, let's talk why I hesitated to include the game into the list. Compared to the fights against the robots, fights against the human enemies are. I can't say they are really bad, just boring. Good thing is, most of the time you shall fight robots. Now, the other thing that makes the game not ideal is basically the absence of side missions. The open world is beautiful, but empty. That's why in the video about the future of Bethesda I said that, quote, there were important things on the stage of ideas that were really good, and the studio did their job well to make those ideas work. End of the quote. Yes, I'm quoting myself. What a big head. Ah, disgusting. Number 11, Assassin's Creed 2. An old game, yes, but the game is actually perfect at the thing it is supposed to do. Yes, it doesn't have the best visuals by modern standards, and gameplay isn't that fancy, but it has everything it needs. The story is not genius, but it is well built. You understand who are your targets and why they are your targets. And that is really important because a lot of games these days fail on this exact thing. The gamer just follows the quest mark without understanding who are these people and why you are fighting. The gamer is just not motivated by story, so a strong understanding why you do the things you do is really crucial. Now about the gameplay. It has everything it needs. A city built for parkour. The player has a large variety of tools to eliminate the targets, which includes swords, daggers, throwing knives, primitive gun, smoke bombs, poison, and hidden blade. The game is well built. The only flaw that I can think of is that the game is old. Also on the number 11, alongside the Assassin's Creed 2, I place Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. It's like a sequel to AC2, the continuation of this story, but with better animation. One more thing before we move on. A thing that I like a lot about Assassin's Creed 2. It has no bullshit. What I mean? There is no crafting in the game. I am going to be a proper YouTuber and ask you to answer a question in the comments. Is it just me, or do you hate that every game these days have crafting? It became so repetitive. It was cool and innovating in early 2000s, but now it's just annoying as F. Now leave a comment and tell me if you hate crafting in modern games. So, Assassin's Creed 2 doesn't have crafting. You just buy equipment with the money you've earned. Aside from being annoying, it is more logical to buy a potion from a doctor or a sword from a smith. Right? Leave it to the professionals. A smith will probably do a better job than a random guy. I mean, I get it. The developers are making the game longer so they can promote the game as a 100 hours game. But it makes the game boring. It's not fun anymore. Stop it. Number 10. Dishonored 2. A perfect game. I can't think of a reason to criticize it. Well, other than the fact that the game is pushing the player to play in a pacifistic style, even though the game offers a brilliant combat. So, how does the game push you to play in a pacifistic style? There is a thing called chaos level. The more NPCs you kill, the higher the chaos level is. And if the chaos level is high, the game world is darker and more infected by the plague, and high chaos may result in worse ending. There is one more thing that I think is bad. So, the player has some magical powers, and the way to regain this magic is either by not using another ability for a couple of seconds, or by consuming a sort of a potion. You can carry a certain amount of potions, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that almost never use these potions, even when I need them, because I'm saving them for the future, when I will most certainly need them. Side note, I never do. It isn't really the game flaw, more like a human flaw, but the game designers must understand human nature and make sure that it won't happen. Other than that, the game is perfect. As I said, it has really good combat, you can see it on your screen. It is fun, dynamic, and diverse. Now, as I said earlier, the game is pushing you to play in a pacifistic style, and that means stealth. It isn't a short discussion on what makes stealth good in games, but for now, I'll just say that the game provides a lot of means to evade guards. This includes game mechanics and good level design. There is not a lot of games that have good stealth, so if you didn't play Dishonored 2, try it. You can also play Dishonored 1. It is as brilliant as the sequel, just older. And there is Dishonored, The Death of the Outsider. You can play that as well if you want. Though I hate what they did to the Outsider. They did my man dirty. Number 9 on my list is Dragon Age 2. Yes, Dragon Age 2, I said that. It is an old game, must admit that right away. And I know that Dragon Age 2 is like hated, but I think that 99% of that hate towards the game is undeserved. At the same time, I don't get the hype about Dragon Age Origins. I think Origins is overrated. Not bad, don't get me wrong, but I like the sequel more. Now, let's get back to the point. Dragon Age 2. Why is it good? As I said, the game is rather old, so the visuals are not impressive. But visuals aside, the game has a lot to offer. Brilliant characters, charismatic. I would dare to say that the brilliance of Dragon Age 2 characters are on the level of Baldur's Gate 3 characters. And I would dare to say that Dragon Age 2 quests are better than the ones of the Baldur's Gate 3. Hold your tomatoes, don't throw them at me yet. Let me explain myself. It is because in Baldur's Gate 3, often there is usually only two options in the game, good and bad. Be good for the sake of the being good, and be bad for the sake of being bad. Dragon Age 2 is often in a gray area. You can still do good or bad, but it isn't so fleshed out. So, characters and story are brilliant in Dragon Age 2. So why people hate it? There is a good reason why, and a bad one. So the actual problem with the game is that it was made in a hurry. So some locations in the game looks exactly like the others. It is annoying, but it shouldn't be the reason to hate the entire game. It is such a minor issue that it is barely worth mentioning. And the other undeserved reason why the game is hated is because compared to Dragon Age Origins, the sequel is more of a personal story, not about the saving of the world. So people tend to think that it is less important, not so much is at stake. But it doesn't make the game bad in any way. Actually, I like it better, because I'm kinda tired of saving the world. Number 8. Life is Strange. Yes, it is a game about teenage girls, but it is actually a really good game. I won't go into much details because it is a story based game. The less you know about the story, the better. I'll just say that the story is stunning sometimes, especially the end of the third episode. God, a masterpiece. The desire to right the wrongs, the hope for the better future, and the bitter understanding. Let's move on. The game doesn't have a lot of gameplay actually. The gameplay is mostly focused on choice making and walking. But on the other hand, the game does not demand any skills from the player, which means that the game is a good start into gaming. Your mom can play this game. You can show that game to the people that are skeptical about gaming and think that gaming are just shooters like Counter-Strike and screaming kids that are upset about the outcome of a Fortnite match. To the people that think that games don't have any depth. It is obviously not true, but it may not be obvious for the people that are unfamiliar with the industry. So Life is Strange is a good start. Oh, side note, I'll make a video on if the games are a form of art. Spoiler, yes. Now, let's talk about the visuals of Life is Strange for a minute. The game graphics is stylized to look like a painting, which means that the game graphics will never be bad. Skyrim graphics, for example, looked impressive in 2011, but don't look impressive today. Life is Strange graphics will look as good as it is, even in 20 years. Now, a little side note about the rest of Life is Strange games. After you try the original game, if you like it, which you most certainly will, I recommend to play Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is a prequel to the original game. Life is Strange 2. No. The game has a completely different vibe. It isn't connected to the first game, so you won't miss anything important. I don't want to spoil anything, I'll just say it is like if we would play as Chloe in the first Life is Strange. I won't get into much details, but there is a long list of what is wrong with the game. Life is Strange True Colors. I haven't played it yet, but I certainly will, when I will have time. The concept of the game looks promising, but I doubt it's better than original Life is Strange. Number 7. Dark Souls 3. Oh boy. First, let's discuss why Dark Souls 3 specifically. Because From Software released two games after that: Sekiro Shadow Die Twice and Elder Ring. If we would compare Sekiro with Dark Souls 3, I would recommend Dark Souls 3, because Sekiro offers only two options of gameplay. You either play as developers intended to, or you die. You don't have gameplay variety, you have your katana and no options of armor. In Dark Souls 3, you have options. Your equipment in Dark Souls determine your playstyle. A big sword deals a lot of damage at once, and a small sword deals little damage, but you can deal several strikes. That's a simple explanation, but you got the point. You can imagine playing Sekiro as drawing in architecture class. You can't draw what you like. You're restricted by the budget, the place, the law of the city, and the laws of physics. Playing Dark Souls is like drawing like a painter. You are free to depict whatever you want, even a house in the sky or a melting house. You got the point. Now about the Elder Ring. I haven't played it yet, but I know a couple of things that makes me put Dark Souls 3 on the list instead of Elder Ring. Elder Ring also have a large variety of weapons, so it is similar to Dark Souls, right? Yes and no. You see, Elder Ring is an open world game, which means that Elder Ring is more disbalanced compared to Dark Souls 3. You see, leveling up your character in Dark Souls actually is not to make your fights easier. Its purpose is so you can create your own build, so you can create your own playstyle, one that suits you. Yes, eventually you become stronger when you level up, but so are your enemies. This is balance. In Dark Souls 3, From Software can predict approximately when in the game you will encounter certain enemies, so they can balance your enemies better compared to your level. When we're talking about an open world game, like Elder Ring, the ability of developers to predict your level when you will encounter a certain enemy shrinks, and so the balance suffer. That makes me put Dark Souls 3 on the list. It is well balanced, it offers a large variety of playstyle. It is a perfect entrance to Souls-like games. Now, as you probably noticed, the video comes to an end, but the list is not finished. Yes, there will be part 2. I'm actually surprised that it took me so long to discuss only 6 games. The next video will be about the idea of the Elder Scrolls 6, and right after that, the second part of this video will come out. Now, leave your likes, subscribe to the channel, and don't be naughty. See you later.